it going, everyone? And welcome back to the 1-2. This is episode 4, and we've got another great edition of all the tournament football from this summer. It's been quite something, huh, Olan? How you doing today, my man?
I'm great, man. It's honestly been such a fantastic summer, as you've said. Between the Copa America and the Euros, we can't get enough of it, can we?
We really can't. I mean, like we went on and on about in our last episode, this has been the tournament that we deserved. We're talking about the Euros, of course. We will start, though, with the Copa America. Unfortunately, last night, the United States lost 1-0 to Uruguay, and in combination with Panama's win over Bolivia, the United States were knocked out of the Copa, the one they're hosting themselves. It's hard really to put into words what this means for the United States national team. Olan, take me through your thoughts about the game.
Well, a lot of people will blame Berhalter or Kevin Ortega, the ref, Berhalter being the coach, of course, or the so-called golden generation that these USA players have been dubbed. But really, you can point the blame to match day 2 against Panama. The red card by Weah was a really big mistake, an emotional, let's say, lapse by getting that red card and slashing out at the player. Really doesn't make much sense to me. And the USA should have never been in that position in the first place because come match day 3 against a really good Uruguay side, it was always going to be tough going, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that you started with that second game. I wasn't even really following, and I saw on Twitter Balogun had scored. I thought it was done and dusted. I think you're the one who pointed out that the U.S. were minutes away from losing at that point. I think Panama took the lead in the 86th, I want to say, something like that. But really, the foundations were in that loss. I mean, 3 teams ending. I guess Uruguay got 9 points, USA got 3, so it didn't even end up with the all 6 there. But that would have taken the United States through. Unfortunately, ended in a loss. 2 factors you mentioned, Berhalter and the referee. I mean, first let's go to the referee because the fans had a lot to say about on social media. What were the controversial incidents in yesterday's game?
I mean, I personally, I've been watching football basically since I was born. I've never seen a yellow card offense with an advantage played on, which is exactly what happened. Uruguay could have even scored there. It just seemed like the referee didn't have control of the match. We always talk about a ref kind of imposing themselves early on in a heated affair. And honestly, Panama has really been the boogeyman for the USA historically. For some reason or another, the USA always struggles against Panama. So going into the match, you knew it was going to be cagey, as it is often in these Copa America matches and affairs, or these CONCACAF ones in this case. And the referee himself had a bit of a controversy prior to the match. In a Copa Libertadores match in 2022, he gave a very controversial penalty to Boca, who was playing a Bolivian side, I forget which. And it was discovered that Boca, before the match, had given him a few shirts. Now, Boca says this is customary for them to do so, but it's a bit odd, especially when the referee gives such a controversial decision.
Yeah, I mean, there's one iconic still of the referee running. He's got the yellow card raised in one hand, and his other hand is pointed up for to play advantage. And especially when you contrast that with later in the first half itself, Pulisic was about to burst down the right. And I mean, I'm not one for conspiracy theories. I believe this kind of it just incompetence. Right, there's Henlon's razor is a literary device I've been referencing quite a lot. It means never attribute something to malice that can be adequately explained by incompetence. And I think we're most likely facing incompetence. But in that Pulisic decision, clearly see the referee take a look at where the ball is, take a second, then look back and blow for the to call the foul to not play the advantage. It was just a shocking decision. I think one that fans had every right to be mad about. Then tell me about the offside, the actual Uruguay goal, the offside that wasn't. What was your read on that? Was that rightfully allowed by VAR?
I think so. I think there's a big issue with the tournament in of itself by not having the semi-automated uh, just replay system, which the Euros have had, which caused a lot of controversy in the Denmark-Germany game. But at least you have the technology there in place. For some reason or another, CONMEBOL didn't want to have it for this tournament. And it's not like the USA doesn't have the financial means for it.
Seriously, and when you consider that the United States is about to host the World Cup in 2026, a tournament that, I mean, on just like a team scale, that's 3 times the teams. Then you take in fans from all over the world across way more host cities. Let's just talk a little bit about the United States hosting. I mean, just take it from the absurd camera angle that we had to start the game. I mean, maybe for a tactical Pierce, that was exactly what you wanted for the rest of us fans. If I'm sitting at home on my couch, I don't want to be watching the game from row 400, right?
Well, of course. And I mean, you and I both love the game from a tactical perspective, but we're also fans, like you correctly said. You want to be able to watch a match like you've always done. It's like you're going into FIFA and you're changing the camera angle. It just feels
Exactly.
off.
That is the. I think for everyone who's played FIFA, that they felt that pain a little bit more. And then just going on in the tournament, I think for me, and we talked about this, the biggest gripe I've heard is it's not just us, fans all over the United States. It's just not a very accessible tournament when you're paying $120 before fees and tax, which is a whole other debate we can get on in our side podcast, whenever that comes in. But then you have to consider Uber, parking, concessions in the United States is absolutely absurd.
But I'd
You know,
also like to point out, Rahul, it's 120 for Panama Bolivia. The cheapest
mhm,
ticket for today's match, which I looked into because I really did want to go since my lady is Colombian and Brazil happens to be one of my favorite countries in the world. The cheapest ticket for row Z in the top part of the stadium was $336, and
right.
that's the cheapest ticket you can find.
It's like they're doing everything besides try to spread the game, and no doubt the United States exit will not help. I mean, just looking ahead, it's kind of you can think of a 2-year cycle. What do the United States need to do? What can they do to make sure they're competing in the World Cup in 2026?
It's just strange that in 2016, the last time the USA hosted the tournament, the team was majorly composed of MLS players. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have players playing all over Europe, quality players at that. The issue is they don't seem to be playing as a team. So, of course, a lot of that can fall on the head coach. Berhalter doesn't really seem up for the task. And you ask any USA fan, he never really has been. They had a number 9 issue for so long that has been
Mm-hmm.
solved with Baloga now being there. Um, they didn't know where to put Reina for so long. Reina's now playing in that advanced midfield role that suits
Mm-hmm.
him perfectly. Pulisic has really taken on responsibility. Tyler Adams, Winston McKinney. This is a good team. This is honestly a
Right.
really solid team. Even I, as an Englishman who will happily look down on the USA as much as I can footballistically, I see a really solid team that does not play together and particularly so does not play to its strengths. Now, the issue is finding the right manager, but also the pressure that's going to come with hosting the World Cup. You can say that hosting the Copa America maybe got to these young players' heads and the pressure of being dubbed a so called golden generation. You see that with every team. You see that with Belgium. You see that with the current England squad. Being dubbed as such is a really difficult title to hold.
It certainly is in a country like the United States, where the average fan is not going to understand the nuance of the game, the nuance of they're historically in Europe and South America countries that produce talent that is there in the United States. We honestly should dedicate a whole episode to this because I was about to get into the whole pay to play scheme. It's so expensive
Uh,
for the best talent, the best pockets of talent to actually have access to a game that all you need to play is a sphere, right? And you think of football with all the equipment and stuff. It just we're trying to solve issues that won't take 2 years to solve. I do like where your head's at. Managerial appointment. I've seen a few joke, maybe not considered joke, but rumors of Klopp being in the running for the United States. Maybe they do have the capacity to attract one of those top managers. Would you say?
Well, I think the USA just had a massive misstep in not hiring Jesse March. He's now the
Mm,
coach for Canada. Canada's now on to the quarterfinals and have performed quite well, if we're being completely honest. He only joined in September of last year, I believe. And, people may say what they want about Jesse March from a Premier League perspective, but he's a really solid coach. He did well in the Bundesliga. His first year at Leeds was quite successful, let's be honest.
Mhm.
And clearly with Canada, it's working out for him. And I think that was a huge mistake sticking with Berhalter. For some reason, I don't think it's an FA. I think it's called something else in the USA. But the USA management, let's call it, has really failed them in this part.
Perhaps this is a positive news, but Emma Hayes, the former Chelsea women's coach, is now the women's national team coach. Can't compare the women's standing to the men's standing, but that's the level of talent they should be hoping to attract. That's really the level of talent needed to bridge what is an actual talent gap on the field. But we'll have a long time to discuss the United States now that their tournament has unfortunately been cut short. Let's get into the tournament that perhaps we have been way more invested and interested in. Certainly interested. And let's get right into the Euros. We're going to go through all the round of 16 games and then preview the quarterfinals, which will be coming up on Friday and Saturday.
I would like to point out while you do this, Rahul, that in the round of 16, we didn't do too bad. I had my little upset predicted for Belgium, which didn't happen. But otherwise, we were flawless until the dark horses showed up 3 years late and eliminated Austria.
Of course, it had to be Turkey, huh? That ruined. I mean, we should have. It's good we didn't lay that parlay. We went, let's call it 6.5 out of 8. We had a split decision on the France-Belgium game, but god damn, if Austria, the team we bigged up so much, I called them the team I was most impressed with, them falling to Turkey. That'll be a great game to get into, but we're going to do this kind of in the format of the actual tournament bracket. We'll go through, for example, we'll start with the teams that make up the Portugal-France quarterfinal and move on from there. So let's go right into our first game, Olan. Tell me about Portugal-Slovenia, which ended in a penalty shootout win for Portugal.
Well, Portugal tried against a very stubborn and organized Slovenian defense. They have their issues, though, in Portugal. Leao did his usual over-dribbling. Bernardo Silva didn't impose himself once again, as he would for Man City. Bruno Fernandes, playing as the 10, would often drop too low in midfield, creating a midfield 3 often instead of the 4-2-3-1 they were lined up in, making them a bit vulnerable. And there was a massive disconnect between the midfielders and the forwards, allowing that massive Slovenian defense, who are all, let's say, 6'2" and above, to kind of just occupy the space. And that 4-4-2, that really rigid 4-4-2 of theirs, was really effective. Ronaldo, again, I hate to say, he looked off the pace. Again, seeing him miss his first penalty of the season was quite sad, seeing those tears, because no matter how I feel about Cristiano Ronaldo, I still have some anger towards him for the 2008 season that he had against Chelsea and the EPL as a whole. It was really sad to see him cry. No one ever wants to see that. And honestly, a bit of me loved that but in a sympathetic way, because you see his passion for the game. You see how hard the guy works. All his teammates for Portugal and every club he's played with tell us how hard he works and how badly he loves the game and wants to succeed. But after that penalty miss, Slovenia was a little invigorated. You saw Česko almost have a goal, but Diogo Costa, amazing save, and that was only just the beginning.
Yeah, right on the man. Honestly, man of the match, undoubtedly Diogo Costa. But just a quick thing on Ronaldo. Yeah, it really was something to see those tears happen at halftime and extra time. So there's a whole 15-minute half to go, right? Like, very rarely do you see, at the end of the day, they're human, but these are like highly trained professional athletes. Where very rarely do you see them break down like that in the middle of the game. And for it to be Ronaldo like that, it was just like a jaw-dropping moment. One that, no matter your allegiances, I'm sure a lot of sadistic folks would have enjoyed it, but really did not sit right with me. Great mentality to go in, then score the first penalty, which is not really Ronaldo's kind of MO. He prefers to sit with the last one. Just saw this tweet. Ronaldo's heart rate was actually being monitored in the game. They track it through the moments of the shootout, and right from the final whistle up until he kicked the game, he was able to stabilize his heart rate at a really low rate, which is just so impressive to be able to shut out all the noise, shut out all the self-doubt. Self-doubt was the pervading sense I got it's almost like he saw like the image, the armor crumble. But enough about Ronaldo because he really was a minor player in the game itself. Diogo Costa, that save, and then tell me about the penalty shootout itself because very rarely do you see a 3-0 kind of shootout.
Very rarely so, unless you're playing England, right? Um, it was the first ever performance by a goalkeeper to save 3 out of 3 at a Euros, which tells you everything you need to know, right? Fantastic performance. Like I mentioned earlier, that save in extra time as well. He really is an unsung hero in all this because if they're going to win the Euros and somehow beat France and somehow beat the winner of that Germany-Spain match, they're really going to need him.
They are, and honestly, on a personal note for him, great redemption story because he had quite a bad try to come up for a cross in the game against Morocco in the World Cup and completely flubbed it. But really a great story, and yeah, you just kind of highlighted the day that we have for us on Friday. Of course, Spain, Germany, and Portugal, France. That's setting up an almighty clash. But going into how the favorites France got to the quarterfinals. Tell me about France 1, Belgium 0.
Well, once again, the French labored. You can see that they still have not scored somehow, which is incredible, a goal from open play. I think it was a bit harsh on Colomboani because it essentially was his strike, but they just gave it an own goal on Vertonghen, who was unlucky. It also seemed like Belgium did not come to play. Really
Yeah.
surprisingly, their setup was a very defensive 4-4-2 with Kevin De Bruyne as a CDM next to Onana, which didn't really make sense to me. And later on, when they were devoid of ideas in the second half, they put him up top with Lukaku as one of the forwards. So it seemed like Tedesco, which I mentioned in our last episode, doesn't really have the tactical nous needed. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but they seem to be missing Roberto Martinez.
They seem to be indeed, yeah. They try. It seemed like they just tried to play for a 0-0 or play for a KDB moment of magic. Maybe Lukaku scores one of those like 10 clear cut chances on 15 xg, but yeah, it was really quite a stinky game, huh? Nothing too much from France either, I thought.
No, Griezmann particularly felt sacrificed on the right wing, much like he had
Yeah.
in Euro 2020 when they had Benzema in the middle and Mbappe on the left. This time they had Thuram in the middle and Mbappe on the left once again. Thuram honestly does not feel like a fit. Thuram, to me, works better in a front two. You
Mhm.
can see it Inter Milan with Lautaro Martinez. He works really well with him. Less so with Mbappe cutting in from the left. But Mbappe himself hasn't seemed like he's come out of second gear this entire tournament.
He hasn't. You have to wonder how much the nose is bothering him. Not what an injury kind of associated in football is something that's just so critical, but you're constantly feeling that on your face when you're making these split-second decisions. Could have an impact. We're hoping to see more out of him in what really is an almighty clash. France, Portugal. Where do you think the game here is won and lost?
In the midfield, I'd say I think it's really important for Vitinha to impose himself.
Mm-hmm.
The French have 3 very hard-working midfielders in Kante, Rabiot, and Chouameni. However, none of those 3 are really creators, so it'll be really interesting to see who is better at keeping the ball. Out of those 4 midfielders mentioned, you definitely say Vitinha and Chouameni are the best ones at keeping the ball. Ruben Neves is really going to be important coming off the bench for Portugal. But it feels like it'll be a game of individual brilliance. Honestly, it felt like that was Belgium's game plan. Either rely on Kevin De Bruyne or kind of Doku and that Eden Hazard role coming off the left. And you imagine it'll be very much the same thing for Leao against the French.
Yeah. It's just funny as you were listing some names. It's kind of an all PSG star clash with an ex PSG now in Kylian Mbappe, but Vitinha and then Nuno Mendes, of course, for Portugal. It's actually quietly been one of the players of the tournament, I've thought, but then the whole host of names on the French side. Maybe one angle we've kind of talked about Mbappe's fit in that 9 role. I wonder if this is where playing on, being allowed to drift rather than sticking on the left wing is a time to target that side of Nuno Mendes, a very attacking fullback, and then Pepe, who's played fantastically but does not have really the pace at the top level anymore. I wonder if that's an avenue for attack. I wonder if João Cancelo gets a start for Portugal, or if it's Diogo Dalot, who's a little bit more defensively solid, though not he's no Aaron Wan-Bissaka, let me say that. Could we see a return to the first game where Portugal actually lined up with a five? There's a couple of interesting ways they can take this. Funny aside, my brother, he was texting me about the game, and I think he accidentally said Matuidi as well, because he was like Kante, Rabiot, Chouameni, Matuidi. And I actually had to do a double take and check that, because that's totally something you can see out of Deschamps, the ever-present pragmatist. Do you think this is going to be kind of a tense game, a nervy game, maybe on the transition? Mbappe or Bruno sending a layout through. Is that the kind of game you envision?
Absolutely. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I am so shocked that my man Olivier Giroud has not had a single minute in the tournament, it seems. I could be wrong, but I think he hasn't come off the bench this entire time. This would be the perfect
He's
match
played
to
a
bring him on.
few. Yeah, it would. Giroud has had a few sub appearances off the bench. I don't believe he started a game yet.
No.
Um,
No, I'm just saying that I was agreeing with you. He definitely hasn't started a match. I can't even remember him coming on, to be completely honest. Um, I think they need him. I think they need him so that to liberate Mbappe. I think Coman has to come on because his directness would really help against those Portuguese fullbacks. I don't think Dembele is the solution out there. Neither is Colomouani. I think Colomouani is better suited for a role off the bench. But yeah, I think once again France is probably going to win 1-0.
That's the exact prediction I have. I mean, really, actually, we talked about the midfield, but maybe the real battle is going to be down those wings with two, excellent attacking fullbacks, whoever it is on the right for Portugal, and two Mbappe, and then whoever it is on the right for France. Very devastating. That could be the matchup, but I think I agree with you. France 1-0 in this one, huh?
Feels like it. It definitely won't be the cracker from earlier in the day.
No, it certainly won't. And let's get right on to that game. Spain, Germany, of course, the first of the quarterfinals is scheduled at 9 a.m. PST on Friday, July 5th. Let's go into how the teams got there, starting with Spain for Georgia 1. What do you think of this game?
Spain are a team that is so calm no matter what. I mean, Lamine has been very creative, a little wasteful, but then his counterpart, Nico Williams, to me has been
Oh,
magnificent.
yeah.
He's been just everything Spain really needed. They needed that directness, they needed that pace, and he is so decisive in the final third. To me, he's been so brilliant. And interestingly enough, their number 9, Morata, who's also their captain, who has a really good goal scoring record for Spain, has felt more of like a decoy almost, occupying defenders to create space for his two wingers and for his midfielders, namely Fabian Ruiz and Pedri, to occupy that space near the box and have cracks at goal. I think that Spain, to me, have been the favorites and might honestly be the favorites heading into this match. You never know, as Germany are the home side, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just the strength and depth. I mean, Germany do have some quality players off the bench, but Dani Olmo to me was the man for Spain for so long in that kind of barren era since that domination ended now 10 years ago
Mm-hmm.
for the Spanish. But it was good to see him score at the end. He's not been the same since his knee injury in 2022, and he's had a few subsequent injuries since. But that just shows the great depth the Spanish have.
Yeah, there's been so much fun to watch. Like, calmness, like you said, was really the key. Because let's give a quick nod to the team on the other side, Georgia, who of course actually took the lead. Was it credit? It might have been credited to the clinical gunman himself, Mr. O goal. But it was Kvaratskhelia who kind of forced it.
Kvaratskhelia. I finally got it.
That thankfully that's the last time we'll have to pronounce this for this summer run. But he was the one who kind of forced that goal with a going in behind and kind of flashing across. But Spain just stayed calm, passed it around. As soon as Rodri had that classic, as he seems to always do, left-footed clutch shot right on the top of the box, they just executed their game plan very well. The two wingers really aren't the types of footballers you associate with Spain producing. I mean, especially one, I would say, well, two of African descent on either wing. Those kind of flair, tricky, speedy players. Even in Spain's peak, it was David Silva and Iniesta, right wing, left wing. It was sometimes David Villa playing as that striker off the wing. Never really had this kind of dribbling threat. Genuinely, such a joy to watch. And Jamal, honestly, I'll have to hold my hands up and say I've been underrating this guy. This kid is phenomenal.
He's phenomenal. What he creates is phenomenal. He had a lot of chances. He was maybe a little bit selfish
Yeah,
in the match. But you can see the finishing is good. It just wasn't there on the day. And honestly, if not for Mamardashvili, the Georgian goalkeeper, it could have been a lot worse.
it seriously could have. I mean, just last thing on Lamali, almost seems to have that trademark cross down already that glided in and clip ball in from the on his left. It's been so devastating this tournament. But yeah, good shout out on the Georgian keeper who kept this from being an absolute rout. I mean, Spain, we've said a lot. We'll say a little bit more when we get to the quarterfinal, but the hosts, Germany 2-0 over Denmark, a game that was actually interrupted by heavy rains and lightning near the stadium for quite a period of time, actually. But tell me about how the hosts got to this quarterfinal.
Well, first, concerning the host, it's been quite a rainy tournament. I remember at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the tournament, all the media outlets were hoping for a similar tournament to 2006 when the weather was supreme. It was beautiful. This time around, we've seen quite a bit of rain throughout the tournament, and it impacted the first match, I believe. I don't think any other matches so far have been impacted by the weather. This one
Mm-hmm.
was, and honestly, maybe that killed the Germans' rhythm a little bit, but they really struggled, and the score, in my opinion, flattered them quite a bit. There was some controversy that I think
Mm-hmm.
was a bit overstated, particularly so in the offsides for the defender Anderson. I do think he was offsides. The technology kind of showed us so. However, the handball for the second goal and the penalty, I think that was a bit unfair. FIFA itself, in my opinion, really need to fix this handball rule in the penalty area. What is a natural hand position? No one really knows what that means. I don't really know what it means. Clearly, neither do referees. So the Germans really labored. Musiala, key again, fantastic match. In
Mm-hmm.
comparison to his other forwards, Sane and Havertz, who were quite wasteful, in my opinion. I mean, Havertz had this brilliant touch to get out of the Danish midfield, have that great run, and in typical Havertz fashion, misses the goal.
Yeah, a lot that you covered there, but I'm pretty much in lockstep on everything. Just yeah, a controversial game marked with a lot of incidents. I think in the end, hard to say they were wrong. Any of them were wrongly refereed. I mean, even the Germans had a goal disallowed in the first half. The Kimmich kind of setting a basketball pick almost at the corner. Um, but Germany, they just kind of did enough against. Well, we'll have to give them props too. I mean, Denmark. Tell me about them a little bit. They are a decent side. What you see from them in this game?
Denmark are a really solid side. Like many in this tournament, hard to break down. It's just the issue was going forward. I mean,
Yeah.
Ericsson in particular was wasteful. The whole team was wasteful in the final third, but he had a really hard time finding good balls for Højlund. I remember at one point they had this counter attack, and it was really just 2-on-2, him and Højlund against Schlotterbeck and
Mhm.
Rudiger. And Ericsson just, I don't even know what he was doing. He had one of the worst passes I've ever seen him play, and that's kind of his game. Beautiful through balls for the center forward. Couldn't find Højlund. Højlund, who's really, much like he had been all season for Manchester United, starved for service.
Star for service, but perhaps as a United fan myself, I will be a little bit harsher on Rasmus, who I actually think has been one of the disappointments of the tournament. Certainly, my expectations for him were sky high. I there was one chance that he actually did very well to win the ball back in the box, and then
Mhm.
instead of going across the goal, he went trying to go high and high to the corner. Didn't work out. There's a second one where he was played through, and Neuer, I thought, came out and did really well to come to the ball quickly and stop his chip attempt. But Højlund just does not seem like he's arrived, for lack of a better word. There was this thing earlier on in his first United season where he himself commented that the size of the club, the attention on him, really did get to him. It took him a while to settle down. We saw him have one sensational run. And I think he scored 8 Premier League games in a row, and then went back to not scoring. I wonder if that played in this tournament again for him, his first major tournament with the Danish side. But at the end, 2-0, Germany will take that and head into what is really, I think, will be the game of the tournament so far: Spain, Germany. What are the stories of this one?
Well, Jonathan Tah was suspended for
Mm.
that match against Denmark, and Schlotterbeck, to me, had a sensational performance, both going forward on corners and defensively. I thought he complemented Rudiger really well. It'll be interesting to see what partnership Nagelsmann will end up going with. And to me, it'll be really interesting to see if Mittelstadt comes back into the side as well, especially since he'll be facing the aforementioned phenom teenager that is Lamine Yamal, and Nico Williams on the other side against the, let's call him OG, because it feels like he's been playing football for absolutely forever. And now that he's back in his right back position, Kimmich feels more at home than he did earlier. It felt like when he got shifted back to right back around February this year at Bayern, he wasn't so comfortable playing right back anymore. He's really gotten into his groove, but defensively, he does have his flaws. I mean, he doesn't have the pace of yesteryear, and he never was a pace demon, as we say politely. I don't know how that's going to work for him. In my opinion, I think Nico Williams might give him hell. The issue will be, can Morata be that decoy we mentioned earlier? Because Rudiger's not going to fall for it. Schlotterbeck or Tah will not fall for it either. So maybe Spain won't have the luxury of having that space for their midfielders and wingers that they've had all tournament.
This will probably be the first one where possession will actually be contested, shall we say. I mean, though Spain have got through the group of death and then, very plucky Georgia side, it's all teams that, really couldn't match their midfield talent. This is, now you're coming to Germany, right? And you're talking about Tony Kroos, you're talking about Gundogan, you're talking about, of course, Musiala. I mean, Kimmich also provides like a controlling sort of element. Rudiger is one of the best ball playing defenders in the world. Midfield battle will be key. I wonder if Nagelsmann, who is, an eccentric manager, give him his flowers. He's a great manager, but I wonder if he's got a tactical tweak in store for us. Where could we even see Havertz play in this one?
I mean, I feel like he's gonna have to drop more men into the midfield just to counter Spain's three. Gundogan definitely will have to drop back, and I think Havertz is going to be asked to really hassle Rodri. He might even man mark him. I think that'll be super important because you can't expect Andrich to kind of come out of midfield and leave Kroos exposed. I think that would be a really bad chess play for Nagelsmann, and Nagelsmann clearly is a really smart guy. I don't foresee him doing that. What really, I guess, I am not sure about is how the Spanish defense will be able to cope. Because you mentioned the group of death, sure, but Croatia and Italy were both really big disappointments for this tournament.
Yeah.
And you saw Georgia honestly had an honest go at Spain. They were really the first team to kind of drive at them. And in the first 10 minutes, at least, that caused Spain problems.
It'll be, I think that's exactly the point, actually. It'll be like, I think on Musiala, whose biggest skill really is driving at players. It would have been great if Germany had that kind of a Yamal on the right, because the only player who will be featured, the only defender you'll ever see on an Anthony highlight compilation is somehow Cucurella every single time, bro. It's like 2 Chelsea games at Stamford Bridge. It's like a random U20 Brazil versus U20 Spain, and Anthony's just cooking Cucurella. But Germany don't really have that kind of presence on the right. But I think driving at the defense, players who can run through and break lines against 2 organized midfields with a lot of like canny operators, the ones who can kind of break the game open, I think will be the key, as you said. Yeah.
I mean, if Sane can rediscover his Man City form, that'd be great. I actually foresee Wirtz playing. For some reason, Wirtz wasn't starting against the Danes. I'm not sure if he had a niggle or something. But Wirtz's game isn't that. Wirtz's game is very much cut inside and play more as a 10 almost, and kind of interchange positions with Gundogan. But these managers are paid the big bucks to make these decisions.
Yeah, I really did forget about Sane because something in my mind has just locked Sane as a left winger. That kind of I've always wanted to call Sane like the next Ryan Giggs because that kind of left-footed left winger is not in fashion at all, right? But that's where he did his best work at City, and since moving to the right, which you'd naturally assume is what left-footed players do want to do to take their game to the next level, he never really kicked on, so he slipped my mind there. But a lot of phenomenal players, two coaches who are coaching, amongst the leading lights in this tournament. What's your prediction for Spain, Germany?
I think I'm gonna go with the quote unquote upset because Spain and Luis de la Fuente seem like the favorites. I just think that the fact that it's in Germany will invigorate the Germans, and I think that I still don't really rate the Spanish backline, to be completely honest. And I think the Germans will test them in ways that they haven't been tested, honestly, before in this tournament. And I can see Fulkrug coming off the bench and scoring the winner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was waiting to see which side you actually picked as the upset. I do think Germany will win as well. And sometimes with these kind of flashy, Spain's a big nation, but always like a Cinderella tale because the expectations are really low. At some point, it does come to an end at the business end of the tournaments, and I feel like Germany just have more of those, battle ready veterans, right? Who've been here, done that. Rodri's really the only guy on this. Rodri and Danny Carvajal, we'll say, on the other side. But I think I'm with you there on Germany winning this one. So we've got France and Germany to contest the first semifinal. That'll be on Tuesday, July 9th at noon. Should be a cracker. So let's just move to the other side of the bracket, of course, where the team we've mentioned the most in our last few episodes hasn't even been discovered yet. That is, of course, the Three Lions. But we'll start right at the bottom here. The most recently concluded game, Turkey, Austria, 2-1 to the Turks. What do you think about this one?
I think the Turks came in brilliantly for this match. Tactically, at least, they were able to use the width of the pitch super well to negate that Austrian press. Their wingers, Gula and Yildiz and Yilmaz and Yildiz were kind of switching sides a lot. I thought all three of them were absolutely brilliant. Gula was incredible on the ball. And from his set-piece deliveries, both of their goals were scored from corners. Both of those corners were taken by him. Gula, honestly, what a talent. And you got to give it credit, too, to their fans, even though I think they went a bit overboard with throwing a lot of plastic cups onto the pitch. But there's a lot of Turks in Germany. There was a huge wave of immigration in the 1980s, which has led to so many Turks within the country who still feel very connected to Turkey. And you can see it in the stands. It feels like a home game for them almost.
Seriously, great color there. But yeah, right down to your point about the game, Turkey came with a plan. I mean, to score two set-piece goals, it kind of speaks to heavy preparation. The way, like you said, they broke through. The Ragnick, the Red Bull model is always at 4-2-2-2. 4-2-2-2-2. Yeah. I think I might have got one too many twos in there. No, it's 4.
2,
4 and 3. Yeah.
2.
The reason to use that kind of tactic is to get everyone condensed into a narrow box where you can start that press from, and Turkey set up right to exploit that. Guler, I mean, it's just unfair, man. Like, why? Should we just become Real Madrid fans, man?
Honestly, I think that they should be investigated. They've done nothing wrong, but it's not fair, is it? They have Hendrik coming in. They have, obviously, Kylian coming in.
Guler barely played for Madrid last year.
But when he did, he was scoring bangers. That's the issue. And it's not like their starters are much older. I mean, it's Rodrigo and Vinny who are, 22, 23 now? So it's just like, what is going on? Florentino Perez is a genius, clearly. But also, I can't remember the Turkish manager's name, but we mentioned before that Baumgartner and Sabitzer were really the danger men for this Austrian side. And since the Turks were controlling I guess, the outside, the wings so well, they were completely negated. Arnautovic was starred for service.
Mhm.
Conrad Lima was completely invisible as the number 10. Conrad Lima, who played at right back, who played as a number 6, who played as a number 10 for his country, can play anywhere.
Mhm.
Vanished. I haven't seen such an invisible performance from him in such a long time. The substitutions helped them a tiny bit. Ralph Ragnick
Right.
did his best to save his side. Gregorich and Grilic, I can't really pronounce their names, they came on and gave him a bit of life. But then it was very route one, just crossing balls into the box and hoping for the best. It was really impressive, because Ralph Ragnick, since September 2022, when he came on as manager, they'd only lost twice in that span. So to lose a third time was really impressive by the Turks, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when you consider that span, Austria also did beat Turkey 6-1 in the Ragnick era. I mean, Route 1 nearly worked, and really the result was saved at the death by one of the best saves you will see, certainly this year, certainly in tournament football.
Ever,
By the
ever.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading that the goal had a .94 xG, which mayhap says that the guy should have scored. But I mean, to produce in that moment, just phenomenal, huh?
I mean, a lot of. I was watching the English commentary, and anytime someone does something well, they want to compare it to an Englishman's prowess. It looked like
Yeah.
a save, though. Genuinely, if you go on YouTube and look up that Peter Shilton save from the Pele header, it's just as good, honestly. And another thing to mention was that the ball was wet. The pitch was wet, and as
Mhm.
a footballer knows, when a ball and a pitch are wet, it is so slippery and it moves so fast, especially when it's bounced off the ground.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, just last point on Turkey, they're really going to be a very dangerous team in this tournament. The coach, I want to say it's Vincenzo Spalletto, something along. I probably butchered that completely, but the coach did note that in their last group game that he wasn't impressed by the kind of mentality, the kind of composure of the team in that game, just the wasting of chances, the needless fouls, the cards. He wasn't impressed. He will certainly be impressed by the performance they put up against a very professional Austria side. With Turkey going through the quarterfinals, the dark horse that never was. I mean, they're here in for a long ride here, and they will be playing the Netherlands. Honestly, a very impressive performance, I thought, beating Romania 3-0. Tell me about this game.
We've waited for a lot of teams to come alive in this tournament. The Dutch did today. The Dutch
Mm-hmm.
had their first
Right.
really impressive performance of the tournament. Their fans, the Orange Army, came out in force. So that is going to be, honestly, just from a fan perspective, watching them clash against the Turks, since it's only about like 60 miles away. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the Dutch, the Holland, or the Netherlands as they call it. That'll be really fun to watch. But Cody Gakpo, he has become. It was really hard for me to pronounce his name right there because I call him something
Yeah.
else. I call him Cody Yakpo, as we all know. He's become the talisman. He's now the leading scorer for the tournament with 3 goals. He got another assist today as well. Well, actually, his first assist, I believe. But he has become their main man off of that left wing. Memphis Depay is not a true centre forward. I don't want to call him a false nine because he still plays as a centre forward, but he's
Mm-hmm.
not your typical centre forward, let's say. Xavi Simons as the 10 isn't ready, I'd say. In the box, he often takes one too many touches. And
Mm-hmm.
Steven Bergwijn on the right, I thought was completely anonymous. Um, the Dutch were ahead, but they came a lot more alive once Marlin came on. He combined
Mm-hmm.
a lot better with Denzel Dumfries just because of his hold-up play. Marlin for Dortmund has played as a centre forward, as a 9, by himself or in a 2. So his hold-up play is much better. And Dumfries is so key to the way this Dutch team play because they have this weird hybrid system of having
Mm-hmm.
4 at the back with Ake on the left and De Vrij and Van Dijk in the middle. But Ake will tuck in with De Vrij and Van Dijk to let Dumfries bomb forward because, let's be honest, Denzel Dumfries isn't a right back. He's a right wing back and offers that width that they really need.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, perfectly said, especially about the tactics. I was impressed with the that kind of setup, and even Reinders, who I wasn't really too familiar with, the AC Milan midfielder. I thought played very impressively today, kind of doing his best Frankie de Jong impression. Of course, the Netherlands are actually missing their two best central midfielders, not just in Frankie de Jong, but Taylor Koopmeiners of Atalanta, both missing the tournament, and they kind of showed some quality for the first time today. I'm completely with you on their play in the final third. It just feels like that chemistry is a bit lacking. It's almost more Gakpo, kind of going and doing a bit of a worldy, creating a space for the shot, nice little run, rather than clean team play. Of course, when Mullen came on, they had a few more moments. Quick word on Romania. They had, first of all, bright yellow jerseys were fantastic. That was a big hit for me. And not a color. I guess there's a yellow stripe in their flag, huh? But anyway, they had a few good moments in the first half until Netherlands scored. Any words on Romania?
It's just a bit sad that Nikolai Stanchu, who provided us with the goal of the tournament, as we kind of agreed on our last episode, didn't seem to get involved enough into the game. The defensive prowess of this Dutch team is kind of incredible when you think about it. You got Van der Veen coming off the bench. De Ligt hasn't played a second. I know that for a fact. I know I got my fact earlier wrong about Giroud, but De Ligt has positively not played a second in the tournament. And when you think of the great Dutch teams, you think of great midfielders, you think of great forwards. You never really think of a great backline, and clearly that is the strength of the squad.
Moving on to the quarterfinal, it will be a very interesting game. I almost want to say this is going to be the hardest team Netherlands face, but they played France and drew in that game. And really, is the question here which Netherlands team shows up?
If the Netherlands team that shows up today, as you're saying, I think they win. I just think they won't reach those heights again. And this Turkish team almost feels like a team of destiny. I have the Turks winning a really heated affair, possibly on penalties.
I would love that. I will stick with that too. Turkey to beat the Netherlands in the quarterfinals to set up a potential semifinal with whoever gets through this leg, and we'll save England for last. So let's go right to what was the first game of the round of 16, that being Switzerland, Italy. Of course, as we said here, we wouldn't have called this an upset, but many people would have felt that this was one of the upsets of the tournament. 2-0 to Switzerland. What happened in this game?
Well, the Swiss completely outclassed the Italians in every department.
Right.
If not for Donnarumma, it could have been a lot worse, honestly. The Italians seemed really toothless. We didn't even mention Scamacca in the Italian forwards last time because, he scored one goal in now 20 matches for Italy. He's never really done it for Italy. They seem to miss Calafiori a lot, especially his ability to get the ball moving forward. Jorginho wasn't starting because that's not his strength. They don't seem to really have in this Italian team someone who's got the impetus to move the ball forward, to create. And their forwards, Chiesa had a couple decent shots, but he's still not the Chiesa of 3 years ago. So it seems like this Italian team was devoid of ideas. Meanwhile, Freuler and Xhaka are so important to the Swiss team. Freuler had a lovely goal. Let's not get it twisted. But him and Xhaka, really, their main purpose is to control the middle of the park, put in those hard tackles, and keep the ball, which they did brilliantly. And Mbolo seemed a little disconnected from Ndoye and Vargas. Those two wingers are really the danger men for Switzerland. We saw Vargas was magnificent. To me, he really just won the game for them, gave that brilliant ball to Freuler, had that goal as well, which was fantastic in my opinion. One of the goals of the tournament. But as Gary Lineker said, this is the worst Italian team of his lifetime. And, he is significantly older than us. But let's just say it from our perspective, I haven't seen a worse Italian team in my lifetime, which basically spans the entire 21st century.
Definitely not on paper. We have to, Italy actually have not won a knockout game at the World Cup since they won the World Cup in 2006. Yeah. They got knocked out in the group stage in 2010, in the group stage in 2014. They didn't make it to 2018. They won the Euros in 2020, 2021. But perhaps we've reached the nadir that was always coming in the kind of trend we've seen with Italy. Just to go back to Switzerland, the two midfielders you highlighted, I think them two and Akanji and Cher behind provide such a solid spine. I think Akanji's been quietly one of the few Pep Guardiola players that had their reputations enhanced by the tournament. And I mean, the second goal is phenomenal, but I actually want to go back to the first goal, which if you really play that back, and I'm sure someone's got it out there with, oh, Swiss scored the 30-35 half goal, but really, Switzerland are attacking in the Italian half. They probe, they can't get it done. They move it all the way back to their half with the goal of getting the Italians out of their block. Moment comes, Akanji plays a line-breaking pass, and the goal is created right from there. I mean, really pure football, fantastic goal. This is a good team. They're here on merit, and they will be playing England, of course, who scraped through in the most dramatic of fashion. 2-1 win against Slovakia. Tell me about, this is the game we've been waiting to talk about, huh?
Well, as an Englishman, you're going to get a very emotional response from me, let's say. But objectively, let's be objective first and foremost. England are easily the slowest team of the tournament with the ball. I haven't understood why, since they got such great players. They say that every team is a reflection of the manager's ideas. Well, if the manager wants to play the ball at 2 miles an hour, sure. But it seriously feels like they receive the ball, they wait, they look around, then they play a sideways pass. There's no bravery. They suffer so much. They had that horrendous defensive lapse, which allowed that semi-early Slovakia goal. Then Trippier makes a horrible pass, a backwards pass once again, which then leads to the Guehi just yellow card, really mistake, whatever you want to call it.
But ruling him out of this game.
Yeah, now he's missing out on the quarterfinals. And who is it going to be? Ezri Konsa, most likely. I hope it's not Lewis Dunk, for crying out loud. And go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, whoa, please no. Dunk, how did he fraud his way to this team where players like Brantway and Tomori were selected?
Well, Tomori had a couple injury issues, but Brantway should be there. The fact that he was sent home and cut, I mean, everyone was crying out loud because of Jack Grealish and James Maddison getting cut. But the Brantway, we could actually really use him.
Even if this relates. This is really just a microcosm of the point about the pace of play, the sideways passes. But there are just no left footers in Pickford is left-footed, but then in the back line and in the midfield too, your main ball players, there's no left-footed players, and I feel like the angles. We talk about this again and again and again. The angles are just all wrong, for England.
Yeah, especially when your left footer on the left wing wants to just cut inside all the time. He wants to occupy the exact same space that Jude Bellingham is in. Jude doesn't seem to know what he's doing. Jude is just running around the pitch most of the time.
Yeah.
And, if not for his moment of genius, he was invisible. And,
I was like, should I put together a compilation of Jude spent like half the game on the floor, bro. Like he was literally on all fours for like significant parts of the game. And of course, I mean, you see there's been replayed so many times, but as he scores that goal, as he wheels away in celebration, just stands there and he's literally saying like, who else? Like, I mean, who else but this guy? This is like the industry planted wonder kid scores last minute bicycle kick equalizer. Like, of course, guys, we've seen the script, huh?
We've seen it so many times with Real Madrid. We know he has the clutch gene, as an American would say. I just think that every single person in England, every Englishman around the world, every single pundit was saying at halftime, 1-0 down, you have to make changes. A lot of people were clamoring for 3 changes even, maybe a bit extreme. What does Southgate do? No changes until the 62nd minute, which I think shows everything wrong with England. The guy doesn't have a clue. You're down to Slovakia, nothing is working. You look completely inept. And then eventually you throw on Cole Palmer, who, to his credit, actually took on players and tried to make things happen. Wasn't fantastic, let's be completely honest. I'm not going to let my Chelsea bias completely take over. But Anthony Gordon doesn't even come on when clearly we need someone to stretch the pitch. Kobbie Mainoo needed help. It seems like he's married to this 4-2-3-1 when there is so much space between Mainoo and Rice and the forwards. There's no plan. There's nothing. There's no bravery. There's no it doesn't seem like Southgate has a clue. And I sound like every other drunk British lad at the pub. Genuinely, I promise you, as someone who has played football, I've not managed high level football, but I have managed first team football for schools. I know what I'm talking about. You can see it on this podcast. There's passion as well. I watch every single match I can, even though I'm working. I'm watching these matches on all these dodgy streams that I won't mention. But I don't understand what the plan is. It literally feels like it's inshallah. Let's hope Kane or Jude do something. That's really what it feels like.
That ended up being the story of the game. I mean, just going back to the substitutions and Southgate, like first to not make those substitutions when a change was clearly needed, but then to make the substitution that's almost been going around as like a meme. I think Ian Wright was the one who said it, like, "Oh, shift Saka to left back and put Palmer on the right," which is what he did when Saka was just starting to heat up. We literally were calling like Saka is finally heating up, and he puts him further away from the goal. It is just shocking management. And
And besides that, look, Ivan Toney apparently was quite cross with Southgate for sending him on in the last minute. And sure, I mean, let's put egos aside, whatever. But why are you sending on a forward with 1 minute left? Like, why are you not sending him on with 10, with 15? Like, what are you doing,
when
Southgate?
you need to stay in the tournament,
And it almost feels like, Southgate is great with the players psychologically. He's created a good environment. It almost feels like he'd be a better general manager for the England side because the guy tactically failed at Middlesbrough. He failed at Middlesbrough in the Championship. And I know that international football is not filled usually. I mean, we mentioned Luis de la Fuente, Nagelsmann, now there's Spalletti with Italy, who honestly, even though the Italians were terrible, he does have tactical nous.
mm-hmm.
International football maybe isn't the creme de la creme in terms of managers, but you can't have a guy who failed in the championship. I don't know what the FA thinks. Sure, we should have beaten France at the World Cup in 22. We got unlucky. Kane became Spursy kind of out of nowhere. But it feels like that was very much the tip. Sure, we played well at the World Cup, and there was honestly good progress since the Euros, and there was only like 15 months in between them, so you're not going to get rid of your manager then. But we've peaked on the Southgate. That much is clear. We've been horrendous all tournament, and I think the Swiss are going to batter us. If we're being completely honest, it's not even me just being emotional. There is just no sensical part of me that feels like we're going to win the midfield battle because they're so compact in their formation with, the 3-5-3, 3-4-3, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to dominate the 4-2-3-1 of the English. I don't think he's got the bravery to switch formations now. He seems like one of those managers that thinks, oh, if you keep it together, eventually it's going to work. Just this prayer, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think that Kane, who's been rather anonymous all tournament, is going to be mauled, eaten alive by Schur and Akanji. And Foden, who's done nothing all tournament and doesn't seem to understand that he has to be a winger and not a 10. Our only hope is that Saka finds a way down the byline and just cuts it back for Kane. But even then, defensively, we're not strong enough to contain Vargas. And Bola, who's been anonymous all tournament, is probably going to score against us. So it feels like truly Switzerland's going to batter us. I genuinely believe that. It breaks my heart to say this, but I feel like we're going to get battered.
It's not even a question. Switzerland have been far better of a team. They seem to have the kind of fundamentals that England struggled with against Denmark, struggled against Slovenia, struggled against Slovakia, will struggle against Switzerland for all those reasons. The only thing we kind of talked about it there, but do you think that goal, Kane, I mean Belgium of course, but Kane more so scoring that goal to which eventually ended up being the winner. Is there any chance the floodgates open up?
I mean, no, because what did we do when we scored? We just sat back. In typical Southgate fashion, you take the lead. It reminded me of the Euro final. You take the lead, like I remember Wembley was bouncing. And then instead of using that energy, you let the fear creep in of, oh, what if they score? It's just like I said, teams reflect their manager. This is the guy who missed the crucial penalty at the Euros in 96. This guy clearly never got over it because he's the most conservative loser manager I've ever seen. And yes, we've had Hodgson, we've had some poor managers since, but with this team, and I read online a lot that maybe it is English arrogance, but no, but let's look at the facts. Like, it's not that we think our team is better than it is. We have the top player in La Liga, we have the top player in England. Sure, he plays a different position in that Man City team, but we also have the top goal scorer in Europe who has felt completely anonymous. So
Are
we're
we
just
gonna do it then? Are we gonna predict Switzerland to beat England this game?
Oh yeah, I mean, I wanted to come home. I tell all my mates, I've told you before I die, I really want England to just win something. I could go to the grave happy, even with just a Euro. It doesn't have to be a second star on the shirt. It doesn't have to be another World Cup. I'd be really happy with us winning our first Euros, but it's not happening this year.
Unfortunately, I do think I am there with you. I'll have to check the lines before the game. I mean, really, on the base of their performance, it should be. I mean, if 50-50 might be generous to England, right? But you never know with the name brand. I mean, Switzerland is going to be a value bet, I think, to get there. And just the last point for me about England, we kind of mentioned it there with Italy on their kind of run of actual international tournament performances. I think England nearly reached the outcome that was kind of destined from the way they played these last few tournaments, from the teams that they actually have beat, from the teams that they failed to beat. And going out to Slovakia really would have tied a bow on the Southgate reign, ending the way really, not the way that we wanted, but the way that we felt it would. Any last thoughts on England, any of the other teams we went through, tournament as a whole before we sign off here?
I hope I'm wrong about England, but just I can't let my heart tells me we're gonna find a way, and then we can beat a scrappy Turkey, and then have a sensational performance in the final. Finally, unlock the potential of the side. But I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I have somewhat of a brain, and my brain tells me it's just not gonna happen.
I will go with the Switzerland prediction, but it would be so England to then have like a comfortable win here, call it like a 2-0, and then lose to Turkey. Huh? That would be that would be true England chaos. But there you have it, folks. That's what we predicted: England against Turkey in the semifinal. That's the second one Wednesday at noon. The first one we have Germany versus France. I mean, we've got a great, whichever way this ends up, and we were very close in the round of 16. Whichever way this ends up, I am super excited to watch all of this football. As always, it's been a blast. Any last words from the viewers before we sign off?
I mean, as you guys can tell, me and Rahul love doing this. Rahul's a very old friend of mine. We've always chatted football, and we're just glad to share these opinions with you. Feel free to disagree with us. Feel free to interact with whatever we have to say. Oh, and one thing I actually want to point out is just seeing Rahul get back into the sport. I know that being a Man U fan has been really tough on him, and I don't mean any diss, but the guy literally started just picking up NFL and didn't know much about it. Now runs a fantasy channel, which honestly is more insightful than practically anything I've seen. But then to see him kind of get back into the spirit of the original football or European football, whatever you call it, and to see his tactical analysis kind of just come back has been such a joy for me as a friend, as a peer of his now. So please just keep supporting us to see Rahul fall in love with the game again.
Honestly, thank you. That warms my heart what you just said, and a lot of that has to do with the tournament, but a lot of that also has to do with this podcast and us discussing. We're having this podcast every day in our text, really, and then we just come through and record it and put our thoughts together once a week for y'all. So thank you everyone for watching, and of course all the great support in all our videos so far. It really does mean a lot. We're excited to put all these videos out for you and keep going here. That has been the one, two. Hope y'all enjoyed, and we'll catch you.